Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the WM32 Football Podcast. I hope you're happy to join us today. I'm joined here by Wes today, and today we have a special treat for you. In this episode today, we are doing a special Coaches Insight series. As you know, we have been doing a lot of coaches' insights on different coaches in the game of football. But today is a special episode that we have for you today because we will be interviewing none other than Wes himself. Now, Wes has experience of coaching, and this is an opportunity for everybody listening or watching at home to get to know Wes a little better. So we hope you enjoy today's episode. So let's get started. Wes, how are you today?
Yeah, very, very well, Nelson. Yeah, can't complain at all. And yeah, very, very looking forward to this particular episode and getting my kind of story and my journey out there in terms of myself as a coach. And yeah, I just hope people enjoy it. And even if it inspires just one particular person at the end of the day that might be sort of struggling or at a crossroads in terms of where they want to go in their career, it might just inspire at least one person to maybe take up the vocation of coaching. Then essentially that's a job done at the end of the day. But no, very, very, like I say, very much looking forward to this particular episode and you giving me a right old grilling.
No worries. Luckily for you today, as most of you may have paid attention to our previous episode, there is no quiz, unfortunately, today. So I think Wes is off the hook for that one because I know I've grilled him with those kind of questions. But let's get started with today's interview. So, Wes, I guess the first question, is to obviously kind of give everybody a bit of information about yourself, sort of your name, your age, and the role that you kind of, take on.
Yeah, so Wesley McGrath, full name, but only get full name treatment if I'm in trouble from my mum or my girlfriend, really. So yeah, 25 years of age. I know I don't look it, probably still get ID'd in certain places and stuff like that. What's the saying? Black don't crack or something, something like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
25 at the moment, 26 in June. So yeah, I've been coaching for about nearly 10 years now. So started coaching at 17. So yeah, I've kind of got a lot of experience. I'd like to think even at my tender age of 25. And in terms of
Brilliant.
obviously what I do, yeah, owner, founder, driving force, all of those kind of cliche words almost for WM32 football.
Brilliant. So now that you guys have just got a bit of personal information about Wes, Wes, I guess my next question is to kind of tell everybody, and obviously myself, obviously I know you personally as a friend, but I guess to tell everybody about your coaching journey so far, like how you started and where it's kind of brought you today.
Yeah, so quite interesting actually, because I was sort of growing up, I guess like most sort of young lads playing football, wanted to be a professional footballer. Unfortunately for me, that wasn't like I wasn't able to make that dream into a reality, unfortunately. When I was playing a lot throughout my secondary school years, I found it really, really tough. I was sort of moving from club to club quite a lot. And one of my biggest bugbearers is, I'm not when I wasn't playing. And you know me well enough, Nelson, as well. Like we've played together at uni and things like that. And when I'm not playing, I'm one of the worst people. One of the worst people going. Like even if I'm injured or just not playing, honestly, I hate it. So yeah, it was just one of those. Like I thought, I got to the age of about 15, and I was like, okay, well, it's going to be really, really difficult actually for me to get into a professional club now. What can I sort of do to essentially look to pay the bills in terms of working and things like that? So thought about maybe becoming a coach. So my work experience in year 10 and year 11 was working with a company called Back of the Net FC. They're more based in Northamptonshire. So I thoroughly enjoyed that. I was going into schools, doing some PE lessons and things like that. It was absolutely brilliant. I'd actually been on their holiday camps as a player, and really, really enjoyed those. And the guy that owns that and runs it almost is the interim manager at Northampton Town, John Brady. So I owe him a lot as well in terms of where I am today, because he was the one that obviously allowed me to do that, get that work experience in very young. And yeah, I've helped him out on a few holiday camps, again, when I was sort of around 15, and again, thoroughly enjoyed it, and found that I had a bit of a way with like the younger people. I don't know if it's because they saw that I was quite young as well. So yeah, sort of found that I had that way, and I'd had jobs previously, but I've kind of felt like coaching was a little bit for me. And then it sort of hit. I was hit around 17, did my coaching badges at, through Milton Keynes College, managed to get my level 2 through there, which was again fantastic. And yeah, I've sort of not looked back really. I think the college helped me a lot in terms of I was on their football program. Okay, I didn't necessarily play as much as I would have wanted to, and that was really frustrating, I'll admit that. But I learned so much in terms of details off the pitch, and sort of how the game is, how it's played and how I would want the game to be played. And yeah, I think if it wasn't for them alongside sort of John Brady and somebody else who I'm going to touch on in a minute, I don't think I'd be where I am today, really. So yeah, sort of hit 17, was sort of looking for sort of a coaching company in Milton Keynes. I didn't really hear of any. Stumbled across Martin White Football Factory on Google, got in contact with Martin, and went for an interview. Now, coaching interviews are completely different to like a bog standard office interview, almost, if you like. So you have to sort of have a chat with the person, whoever that is, whoever's taking the interview, and then you have to go and coach because they want to see, if you're essentially good enough for what they're looking for. So I went on a Martin White Football Factory camp, went in, done an interview, and I thought it was a little bit strange initially because Martin's camps were fairly unique, I thought, over here, because they were only half a day, 9 till 12. I'm used to holiday camps being 10 till 3. Obviously my experience as a player and whatnot growing up. So yeah, was speaking to one of the other coaches about it, and he just said, look, the kids get bored quite easily. So 9 till 12 is actually quite nice. So I was like, okay, fair enough. But yeah, spoke to Martin and whatnot, did my interview, and I'll be honest, I wasn't really expecting too much off the back of it, but I think, Martin saw something in me, and he gave me some work, a little bit of coaching work, and yeah, I was sort of working on and off with him for about 8 years up until fairly recently. So yeah, I owe him a lot because he again was one that gave me my first break almost in coaching. And then went to university, went to UCFB, obviously met yourself there, and did the sports business and coaching degree, and again learned so much from the different tutors that were there, their experiences that they bring to lectures and seminars, which I thought was absolutely fantastic. And you can draw a lot, I think, from the UCFB tutors, and I think that's what makes UCFB quite unique, in the sense that you can have those almost personal relationships with the tutors. They're obviously not too personal, but a quite fairly personal relationship with them. And again, learned so much, and I guess it's landed me almost sort of where I am today. It's not been easy along the way, but yeah, it's almost like I'm sort of at the start of something that's really growing, and at the moment, and I can't complain at all, really.
Beautiful story. Shout out to everybody, obviously, that you mentioned that that brought you here today and had an impact in where you are today. I can obviously testify myself to the fact that you actually, when we met each other at university at UCFB, you actually had a stint as a coach for the third team, and that was also a good experience for myself, not just being your friend, but also as a player, trying to see it from that perspective, how you went about, your coaching and your philosophies and what you wanted to get out of us when you had your stint. So I guess my next question is, did you always, I guess you obviously answered the question, you didn't always want to be a coach, you wanted to be a professional football player, but was there a certain spark that just made you think, okay, yes, coaching is now what I want to move forward in? Because it seems like you wanted to remain within football, but I guess you just wanted to figure out what it was that you wanted to do. So what was that spark? Do you remember the experience of that spark you got?
Yeah, it's quite interesting. Like I had to be involved in football. Like anybody that knows me knows I just wake up, eat, drink, sleep, breathe it, 24/7 constantly. Like in anybody that knows me again, like in my house, it's just football, football, football. I don't know how my mum puts up with it half the time. Watching a lot of football and stuff. So yeah, I think it must have been obviously the work experience I did with back of the net. And I thought, oh, this is quite nice, quite like this. But I think, the year that I had before I went to university working with Martin really,
Yeah,
really helped. He was a fantastic, fantastic mentor to me. And I think as well, when I've done other bits of coaching, I've learned a lot from him, and I actually take a lot from, my experience and what I've learned from him into different sessions, tone of voice, and, how obviously how you speak to players, sessions, different types of sessions, what you can do for different age groups and how you can deliver those. And, obviously, every session isn't going to be a perfect session. You are going to get some kids that perhaps may want to bend the rules a little bit and stuff like that. But then
yeah,
it's about how you deal with those individuals as well. And I learned so much from Martin, and I'll always be forever grateful for him. Because like I said, I think if it wasn't for him, certainly I wouldn't be where I am today. Um, so yeah, I'd probably say those were the two kind of main things. And then obviously what going to university, it was like that stepping stone, because I originally wanted to be an academy coach or coaching in a football academy. I think that's probably changed a little bit over the years, but certainly at that time it was almost like that university was that stepping stone to get me to where I wanted to go.
yeah,
So yeah, but I definitely think, like I say, the helping out at back of the net with those holiday camps initially, and then certainly having that experience working with Martin White Football Factory for a year before going to university really, really sort of helped shape kind of who I am as a coach today.
brilliant. I'm really glad that you touched on, I think one of the words I really took in was the fact that you obviously had a mentor to begin with to help you guide through
Yeah.
your experience over there. So I guess this leads on to my next question. So what can you name me, I guess, some of the coaches you looked up to? It doesn't have to be somebody in professional football, it could just be someone like you mentioned, like Mr. Brady himself, who really helped you.
Yeah.
Yeah, who inspired you? What coaches you look up to? Give us a few names.
Yeah, there's quite a few. I could be a while, to be honest, because obviously, like as a sort of younger player, yeah, I did look up to John Brady when I was going to back of the net on a Monday night. Sean Carey, as well, ex professional, and Sean was brilliant. Like those sort of coaches at back of the net were absolutely brilliant for me. They knew my strengths, they knew my weaknesses, but they didn't really focus on the weaknesses too much. They just wanted to focus and sort of hone in on the strengths, which I think was crucial for me.
Yeah,
So definitely looked. I think Ed Steen has to get a mention. So I used to do a bit of training with Ed on a Saturday morning, and obviously a little bit older, so he could get away with a little bit more with us. And I think that's helped me as well in terms of working with older players um,
yeah,
as well. But I mean, Ed's got me in the fittest shape I think I've ever been in, doing that little bit of extra training. So Ed's definitely one that I've looked up to. Martin was definitely somebody in my early years that I looked up to, because it was almost like, I want to draw on his experiences that he'd got as a coach. Mark Walsh and James Nash, I think, as well, from MK College. Really looked up to them. They obviously, all these guys are very knowledgeable anyway, but kind of working with them, day to day, again, really wanted to learn from them and draw as much out of them as possible. And I think, especially with Nashi, it was like standards. Like it was almost like, right, you have to kind of be at the top
okay, yeah,
every day, every session. You've got to be performing almost to your maximum. And I think that's something that I've tried to take into my coaching, in terms of like setting benchmarking for players and things like that. And, how do we improve? How do we get better? And I think anybody that's worked with me certainly will agree with that. But yeah, I mean, there's loads. There's still some that I look up to now, and I'm like, I'd love to be like this particular person or something like that. I think now I'm more one-to-one based, and more individual based. Sol Isaacson-Hurst is probably renowned as one of the top, or one of the best technical skills based coaches. Certainly looked up to him in terms of how I can affect players without physically being there. So seeing some of his stuff and whatnot, that inspired me to do my Wes Wednesday YouTube series, just some ball mastery stuff for young players. And yeah, I mean, if I look at going into sort of the professional game, I think in my early years, definitely like Roberto Martinez stuck a chord with me straight away. I don't know if it was because of the way his Wigan team played, and it was like, I mean, Wigan were one of the best footballing teams in the Premier League, yet they were always sort of fighting relegation and sort of getting out of it. But I just loved the way his teams played. Guardiola, I think any sort of young coach will always look up to Pep, and just the way that he gets his teams playing and how they sort of carry out the tasks. Bielsa, El Loco, love the guy, completely love the guy. Just the intensity that he works at is just on another level. And even at college, we studied a lot of Guardiola's Barcelona, but also Bielsa's Bilbao in terms of how to really hone in on a press and things like that. It was relentless. But then I think certainly in recent times, I'd have to go with Pochettino. I'd have to. It would be criminal of me not to. I mean, yes, he was the manager of my club, and everything else, but just the way he is as a person, I've kind of attached myself to him a little bit. And I think his time at Tottenham coincided with me just getting a bit more of an understanding in terms of coaching and how I wanted to be and my journey and everything like that. So yeah, I think last one from the top end almost is definitely who I like to call the gaffer, Poch. I just completely love the guy. The environment that he got everybody working in at Tottenham was just fantastic. But you could see it. Like, I was fortunate enough to go to the training ground, and you could sort of see his imprint on the staff that were there. Even though he's not there, you could just tell it had that Poch touch about things, and how he kind of created that environment of everybody being together, everybody believing in a project, and I think that again that's something that I've taken into my coaching for sure.
Brilliant. Nice touch there with the gaffer himself. I also like the fact that you didn't just, it wasn't just subjected to just, professional football. There were different people from different sort of levels of football, which I'm sure a lot of people will appreciate when listening to today's episode.
Definitely, Nelson. I think, sorry to interrupt, but it's just, obviously you're sort of, as you're growing up a little bit, it's almost like, well, you got to take bits from like different, I think ex-players say it a lot when they go into management. It's like, I'll probably take the best bits from different coaches and things like that that they've worked with. And there's even someone I forgot to mention as well, Ryan Hill, who gave me so much confidence as a young person. I thought at sort of 18 I roughly sort of knew about the game, and he just completely opened my eyes up again to a completely different way of playing the game, and then obviously try to translate some of it into coaching. The belief he gave me was ridiculous. I've worked with him as well. One of the calmest coaches I think I've ever seen. He's literally the cool head when everything else is just 100 miles an hour. And yeah, I think again the belief that he gives people was fantastic. And yeah, I think he's definitely one that struck a chord with me as well.
Brilliant. So you've mentioned, the different coaches that have helped inspired you and stuff. And like you mentioned just there, which I think was good, that you took little bits and pieces from them. So by doing that, obviously you've now created, like yourself, you've done owner and founder of WM32 Football. But I believe obviously along, your coaching journey, you've had to ask yourself the question, what, you know, you would feel like what your coaching philosophy would be, you know. So what for people obviously who don't know much about your philosophy, obviously this is now the opportunity to kind of explain that. What is your coaching philosophy, Wes, like when you go about coaching?
Well, I feel like I'm going to be like Louis van Gaal here, because I think the word philosophy wasn't really, you know, brought to many people's attentions until he rocked up at Man United. And this is something that has changed, been tweaked a lot
Yeah.
over the years. Probably, obviously, in my early years, probably didn't even know what it was. Didn't even, you know, get, you know, it's like philosophy is like, what, like, is that something to do with something completely, you know, different, like not even within football, and stuff. So yeah, I think it was quite interesting when I did my master's degree again at UCFB. I think it was sort of like the first time that I was able to sort of nail what I thought my philosophy was. And, you know, my philosophy is within my coaching philosophy, not my playing style, because they're two different things. And again, something on the master's degree that we looked at and in great detail, and how to separate the two. But I guess my philosophy as a coach is to help players develop and improve, but also by giving them the responsibility to know how to improve. So within my individual and my one-to-one sessions, even small group sessions, I film it. I film a segment of the session, and using that analysis tool really, really helps, because essentially the video doesn't lie. So yeah, I can tell players all the time and demonstrate and show them, but ultimately, if they're not quite getting it right, or if there's a little bit something that's a little bit off technique wise, you know, the video really kind of brings everything out, and it's like, all right, okay, you know, are you scanning before you receive the ball? Are you taking your first touch forwards? Are you receiving on your back foot? You know, is your non-kicking foot, say, half a step behind the ball? You know, are you keeping your body upright? So actually going into a lot of sort of biomechanical and technical information, which is something that when I was setting up WM32 football, I didn't see a lot.
Right.
So I thought, right, well, let me bring that into my coaching then, to try and make myself a bit unique and try and, you know, make me stand out. But yeah, I guess ultimately it's to help sort of players improve and develop, to get them to a better level than what they're playing at currently. And I think by doing that, you know, just giving belief, I think it's massive. I see it a lot, with young players now, especially obviously with the last sort of 12 months with the situation that we've been in. But, you know, young people just seem to be really, really unconfident and lacking of self-belief a lot. And I think, you know, but as people, we all love a little bit of a pat on the back and a well done. But I think that the trick is when players are getting frustrated that something perhaps isn't coming off, or, you know, they're a little bit struggling, you just have to go, right, okay, let's work out a formula to get you success. But success is different, you know, for every player. You know, success for me as a coach is completely different to what success would look like for one player in one session, and then, you know, the next session that I have. So sometimes, you know, I do ask them, what is success for you? So if we're working on passing, you know, is it just simply a player passing the ball into a mini goal? And that mini goal then acts as a reference point as a player on the pitch. Is that the success that they're after? If so, okay, I'll roll with that. Or is it actually the success? Yes, the passing is your end product, but is it, you know, your angle to receive? Is it you checking your shoulders, your first touch, and then, you know, your pass, which is the end product? So yeah, your topic might be passing, but it might be 4 or 5 different things that you need to get out before, you know, the actual passing itself. So yeah, I guess for me it's just about developing players, to make them better than, you know, the current level that they're at, and to give them the confidence and the belief, you know, that they can sort of achieve what they want to achieve. I guess that's probably the best way I can sum it up, to be honest.
Brilliant. I was going to actually ask you quickly to, I guess, because something came in my head, which I think you'd obviously would be happy to share, like an example of your coaching philosophy actually coming to fruition in the, how would I put it about, I guess, the impact it's had on some of the kids that you've trained. Like I know you post on the WM32 football page, a bit of testimonial Tuesdays that comes from,
Yep.
Parents, the kids themselves in terms of the impact that they have. But there was one example that I wanted you to share about. I think one of your kids, I think it was either this year or the year before, he got called up to play for a Barcelona a school academy. I'll let you like share a bit more of that, just so people know that what your philosophy, the time and effort you've put into it is actually there's actually evidence of it.
Yeah, I think this one is probably on the face of it my biggest success story.
Yeah,
When, don't get me wrong, it's fantastic that the player's managed to achieve what he's achieved. I'm not discrediting his achievements, but actually I think there's probably other success stories that perhaps haven't been shouted about as
of
loud.
course. Yeah,
But this particular one, as you mentioned it, so this particular player I was working with at MK Dons, actually in the pre-academy environment in the advanced centre, and I had a session. I'd never seen him before in my life. Sort of introduced myself to the group and everything like that, and did a particular practice. And sort of asking him like, where do you play normally? And he said, oh, I'm a striker. I was like, okay. I said, go and play centre mid for me. And there was something. I think he received the ball, drove forward, and played like a really, really well weighted through pass. But before that, I think he received the ball, drove forward, beat a player, and then done it. So I was like, centre mid all day, all day. So then I had a chat with it, and I said, look, I'm going to turn you into a centre mid if you fancy it. So he was like, okay. I think he was just one of those that just wanted to absorb what the coach was saying.
yeah,
And things like that. Obviously, as coaches, that's the massive dream when you get a player that's open to changing a little bit, especially at any age really. You say to somebody, "Oh, I think you're this," but they've been, well, I play as a winger, yeah, but you might be a fullback. So so yeah, then I managed to almost recruit him, almost if you like, 1-to-1, and just worked with him a little bit more consistently on being a central midfield player and what those real requirements are needed to be and to play as a central midfield player. Essentially, like, his talent will determine what level he plays at, but I think the requirements of any position will pretty much stay the same.
yeah,
So like I say, the talent will determine half the time where I think, or where the players will end up. So yeah, it was just working with him. Was fortunate enough to send him to Peterborough for a trial. He was doing really, really well there, actually. This is just before COVID hit. He was doing quite well there. And actually got invited back for an 8-week trial once things had sort of settled down a little bit. But yeah, his family, him and his family moved out to Poland for COVID. One of his family members is Polish anyway, so they moved out there. And next thing I know, I'm getting this message, all this stuff coming through saying that he's been signed for a Barcelona International Academy, and thank you for all the work that you've done. And I'm just a bit like, right, what's happened here? So yeah, I think like I say, his talent has got him almost to where. But I think that the thing that impressed me the most with him was his willingness and want to just be the best that he can be. And I mentioned before when I was at MK College about standards. Like, he had the highest standards I think that I've probably come across really of any young kid that I've worked with, and he fully deserves that particular accolade. I hope that he goes on to obviously achieve what he wants to achieve, because I think there's a real talented player there. But it was a nice sort of story to have when you see like one of the players that you're working with is signed for a Barcelona International Academy and things like that. So but I mean, his willingness and drive to succeed, get better, and want to improve like every session was fantastic. He's an intelligent player as well. So when you'd ask him questions, or when you'd ask the group questions, he'd always be the first one to answer, but he'd always give an intelligent answer. And I'm just like, oh my God, give me more, please. Just give me more of like,
yeah.
and the way he articulated his point was fantastic. So yeah, he's getting on all right as well. I've not spoken to him actually for a little while, but yeah, last time I spoke to him, he was getting on really, really well. And actually, I think he's playing a year up because of the way that the school system works over there. So he's actually playing a year up,
Okay.
but yeah, more than holding his own and whatnot as well. And I think that he's got a tournament soon against the likes of Arsenal, Everton, Liverpool, and a few other clubs as well. So yeah, that's probably one of the more success stories that I could probably share. But there's definitely been a few that have happened as well during my time.
Brilliant for that, Wes. Thank you. Now I want to move on to, we've done your coaching philosophy, and again, like I always seem to pick up little things as you're speaking along the way. I'm like, wow, this is a really good point that he's mentioned. And one of the things you talked about was that there's an actual difference between coaching philosophy and playing style. Now, the reason I said that is because I think me growing up and getting used to football, I always thought that those two were the same things. But obviously now, like you said, you've expanded your knowledge, you learn more about the game, you realize, oh, wait, no, these are completely two different things. So I guess if you could quickly explain to those who may have been in my situation, thought, okay, these are the two same things, like what the difference is between those kind of two, the philosophy and the playing style.
Yeah, so in terms of philosophy, it's almost how I guess it's both are in an ideal world, 100%, both are in an ideal world, but it's almost like, how do you want to coach? Essentially, that's your philosophy. That's almost like your beliefs, what you believe in as a coach, but then how can you bring that to the table? And then your playing style is how you want your team essentially to play. So, do you want to be a bit more of a possession-based team? Is it a win at all cost kind of mentality? Is it counter-attacking? Is it, there's different styles in which you can play. Are you just going to be a bit more direct and things like that? And it's been quite interesting as well, I think, as I've developed my knowledge and expanded my knowledge. Obviously, I was still playing. So at certain times, like, I would get asked questions about tactical things, and I was a bit like, right, okay, but they could not come completely out of the blue. Like I wouldn't know they were coming. And I think I even had that once in one particular session. We did an hour, I think, out on the grass, and then came back into the changing room, and it was like, I think the team we were playing, I was playing 4, we're playing 3-5-2, and we were getting a little bit outdone, especially out wide. But it was essentially what we hadn't worked on and what we'd failed to work on in my time. There was actually just sliding over as a unit and as a team. But we didn't get the opportunity to work on it. So when it comes to a game day, people are a bit unsure of their roles and responsibilities. And I think if you are going to play, say, a back 3 or a back 5, you've got to work on it religiously. It's a lot easier, I think, when you set up with a back 4. I think a lot of, because it's something that players are used to a little bit more. So you don't have to necessarily go into too much detail regarding roles and responsibilities. But yeah, I think to divvy the two, philosophy is sort of how you want to coach and how you almost want to be perceived as a coach. And then your playing style is how you want your teams, in an ideal world, how you want them to play.
Brilliant. Do you think there are any small links, like 1 or 2 links between them as well, or is it just they're just completely 2 different things?
There's definitely crossovers. Crossovers. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, if you look at certain teams, take Atletico Madrid as a prime example. Like, Simeone's almost personality comes out in his teams, and whatnot. I think if I look at Jose's Inter Milan team, his personality came out in that team a lot, as well. Guardiola's Barcelona, obviously we know Guardiola had this ideology almost of tiki-taka, but that come from the Dutch model of total football almost, and possession was king and everything like that. And you saw that coming out. Obviously it's far easier to, I would say, do it when you're working every day on the training pitch. I think it's a little bit harder when, say, you have your team maybe once a week. It might just take a little bit longer. So whereby something that could take 6 weeks, say if you had a pre-season with a with a senior team, working sort of every day, or even in a college program, you're working near enough every day. So something that might take 6 weeks, if you're working at a junior team, it might take 12 weeks as an example, just because you haven't got that time on the training pitch as often. But there's certainly a bit of a crossover, but I think it's important to recognize that actually they are different.
Brilliant. Well, for those of you listening, I hope that kind of helps, because I know there's always something that you can learn, and I've definitely taken something out of this as well. So I appreciate that little insight, Wes. Now, we also know that an element of coaching is obviously the players. So the players that you've managed, you've obviously talked about the success story with one of your players, and you kind of mentioned some qualities that were specific to that player in particular. But if we're just generalizing it, what sort of qualities do you look for in a player?
Qualities that I look for in a player is, I guess I'd probably look for a lot of uncoachable qualities. Obviously technical ability is one. Like, I don't know if that's because I was more of a technical player myself growing up. I mean, you've played with me, you could probably testify as to whether that's the case or not.
No, yeah, definitely technical player. Yeah.
So yeah, I think technical ability is one, because I think if you haven't got essentially any form of technical ability, then you're going to struggle. But I definitely think it's more of the desire, the willingness to sort of work hard. I place a lot of emphasis on, certainly in team environments, when I've placed a lot of emphasis on sort of working for each other, helping each other out. And I think that sort of stemmed from my college days, because that was sort of what we did as a team. Like, we could all play, but we had that ability to almost fight for each other as well on the pitch, which helped a lot. But no, certainly that technical ability, that willingness to learn, want to improve and get better, that desire to almost know kind of what to do sort of on the ball and off the ball. Yes, there's going to be some things that obviously are going to need to be worked on, but at the end of the day, if they have something to begin with, you can work with that. It's quite interesting though, if I completely flip it at the other end with the mini kicker sessions that I do, it's obviously that's completely different in itself, because you're somebody that first experience of football. So I guess from that perspective, I think I have to separate it. So if I was looking at like mini kickers, it's like, look, if they turn up with their kit and a water bottle, they're good to go, kind of thing. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. It's just that obviously they're getting that introduction into football. So they're not going to necessarily be able to do certain things that perhaps somebody who's 13, 14 would be able to do. But at the same time, I think younger kids can do a lot more than sometimes us as coaches think. So I've been teaching, I think at the session I had on Sunday was teaching some players to do Ronaldo chops, and I've taught them flip flaps and things like that. I think the skill with that is actually how can you break it down to make life so much easier for a player to be able to do it. And again, I think that's something that I've learned from Martin White, really, because I'd done a few of those sort of younger sessions with him before, or I'd worked with a youngish group on a holiday camp. So to be able to literally get something that's quite complicated and strip it right the way back into, right, well, how do you actually do it? If it's a flip flap, well, actually you're probably going from your little toe to your big toe, and you got to try and keep your ball, like the ball is like on a bit of string, and you got to try and keep it on that string. Obviously going to one-to-ones, it's completely different. They're more for players that are a bit more keen within football, and they want that extra training and that extra push. So that's when that the more technical detail comes in, and the micro details almost come out a little bit more. So yeah, certainly for that, it would definitely be the technical ability in terms of the qualities, but I think as well just how kind of coachable they are. Like, I've had players that necessarily aren't the greatest in terms of coordination or technical ability, but they're coachable. So you can say to them like, look, if you're trying to do this, if this is what we're working on and we're trying to do this, can we perhaps do it this way? Or if I have to show them, that's absolutely fine. Obviously that's part of my job, but you tell them, you show them, and then they come back next week and they've nailed it, and you're like, right, I can tell you've been practicing. That's something that I can't coach that. So I know recently something that's really sort of bugging me a little bit is players' sort of hips and groin like rotations and twisting and turning. So I think I've literally given like a good handful of players a little bit of a task where just do like single foot volleys to do. So they're like their foot's on a pillow or something, and mum, dad, brother, sister or whatnot's throwing them a ball and they've got to like volley it, but they're doing like that motion with it just to get that hips and that groin area sort of rotating a little bit better. So yeah, that's something that I've noticed really, really recently, and I'm there like, what's going on here? Like, why aren't players either comfortable receiving off both feet, or isn't a player just say receiving and then off his left foot taking his foot, then his second touch with his right foot, or why aren't they sort of opening out their body a little bit when they do receive? So yeah, but like I say, I think technical ability is probably one, and then that desire and that willingness to learn. I think if I have that, then I can work with sort of any player, I think, really.
Brilliant. Now, obviously, with all the different players that you've worked with, because it seems like what I'm getting is it's the technical ability, so stuff that you see, but one area that you mentioned is the intangibles. Like you mentioned, the willingness, the desire, like like you said, those you give them a task to do, and then they come back and they may have gone further than that to show how far they can go. Do you have a bias? Because I'm sure like you have not a few favorites, but you might have bias towards one player over the other. Have you had that over your coaching experience, like a bias towards a certain type of player?
Yeah, I think most coaches do. If they don't, I'll be shocked. My bias is probably towards. It's quite interesting because, like I say, I was a technical player, so I think initially my bias was, and my first question was like how good are they on the ball? Forget anything else. Like, how good are they on the ball? So my bias was always towards those the technicians, almost, if you like. Whereas now, I think I've probably seen one player that in my time coaching that was I wouldn't say the complete opposite, because he was still a good player. He's now at Northampton Town's academy, but I think it was just the fact he stood out because he had something completely different to the rest of the group, and that was he actually wasn't afraid to tackle, number one, because a lot of the players that I work with aren't necessarily ones that would want a 50-50, essentially. He would talk and just organize, and he was just literally, like I said, I don't know if it was just refreshing to see, because I hadn't really seen it a lot in young kids. Because we as coaches, I think we've gone a lot about sort of how we look like on the ball, as opposed to or what we look like on the ball as a team, but we haven't really coached a lot of what we look like off the ball, so we don't really coach defending much. But it's quite interesting because before I went to university, I hated coaching defending. Hated it. It was like, oh, defending session, oh, really hate defending. Right, I'll just do it. But then I quickly realized that the defending sessions that I was delivering were probably better than the attacking sessions. Then I've gone to university, and now it's like it's almost flipped. Like now it's like if I get an attacking one, I'm there like, oh, brilliant. Like, because I think what I found is there's so many different variables with attacking, and there's so many ifs, buts, and maybes. Whereas defending, it's very much right. Stop the ball going in the goal. Simple as that. I don't care how you do it. Just stop the ball going in the back of the net. Whereas, all right, you could say, well, attacking, just put the ball in the back of the net. Yeah, but there's loads of different ways in which you can do it. Are you going to play through? Are you going to play wide? Are you going to create overloads? Everything like that. Whereas defending, it's just like, right, be brave, almost be, compact as a unit as defensively, and just stop the ball going in the back of net. Like I say, if it hits you, where perhaps it, if it hits you in the stomach, the face, in your crown jewels, as they say, it's you stopped a goal. So yeah, I think I don't know now if I have a bias to players who are probably the kindest way I can describe it is a roughhouse. And the most PG way I can say is a bit of a roughhouse. I don't know if those are the sort of players now that I'm like, yeah, I'll have a bit of you. I'll have a bit of you, because that's, again, something that really I can't coach. Like, I can't really coach somebody to win a 50-50. I can't coach somebody really how to essentially tackle. So yeah, it's one of those where, well, if they've got that, brilliant. Like, I don't have to really worry about it. I can't coach somebody to have the desire to go and win the ball, or the want to go and win the ball back quickly. But what I can do is coach somebody how to pass better, how to dribble better, how to shoot better. But yeah, I think my bias has certainly changed. Don't get me wrong, I still love, silky players and, skillful players, technicians, still love those. But I think my bias has probably shifted mainly towards players that I look at and I go like, right, okay, you may not be, like I say, you may not be overly the best technically, but there's something in you that I like, and I'm gonna like roll with it essentially, and then everything else sort of comes later. But I guess like coaching footballers is almost like you've got a puzzle. You've got this jigsaw puzzle, and there's all these pieces, and it's just about how you put them all together, and then eventually you get from the pro perspective, it's like you get these, you get your jigsaw, and it's about how you put it all together, and then hopefully the finished product is what you see on a match day. So yeah, but like I say, I think my bias has definitely changed over the years in terms of going completely just for the silky players. Like, don't get me wrong, still love them to pieces, and things like that. But yeah, I think it might just be going more down the complete opposite end, and heading towards a few more sort of roughhouses.
Roughhouses, cool. With these certain type of players, have you had or have you given out any nicknames because of the way they play? Like, maybe you've seen a little Hazard or a little, have you given nicknames out to players like that? Do you have that kind of connection with the players where it's like, okay, like the way they play, you give them this, that way, they kind of embrace that for themselves?
Yeah, there's been a few. I don't think I can remember them all off the top of my head, but no, there is one certainly at the moment, who I call Winksy. Ironically, his name's Harry as well. He's a Spurs fan, plays central midfield. So I was like, Winksy, let's have it. So yeah, no, there's definitely been like a few. Obviously you get the kind of buzzword Star Boys and all of this kind of thing that are going down at the minute. But yeah, Winksy's definitely one that I've given a nickname to one particular player. So yeah, I think that's probably the one that stands out. I think even like in my sessions, certainly sort of like one-to-ones and stuff, there's a couple that I've done that have been linked to player traits almost. There's a session that I've started doing fairly recently, or well, I say fairly recently, in the last sort of 12 months or so, but it's centered around Heung-min Son. One of your favorite players in the league, even though you're an Arsenal fan and he plays for Spurs. But it's one of those where receive the ball out wide, drive, and then like one of Sonny's trademark moves. This is if almost receives it wide, cuts in, little feint to go either way, and then strike at goal. So I've done that one. I've done one sort of centered around Christian Eriksen, where it would be ball comes in as a central midfielder, open out, and then can you sort of whip it and dip it almost into the opposite corner. So there's been a few that, like I say, I've done. There's one centered around Henry as well. So for a centre forward, they start back to goal, drop in, play a little 1-2, and then they peel out, and then the Henry trademark finish of curling it into the far corner. So there's definitely like some of those that I've done as well, from a sort of individual and one-to-one perspective.
Cool. Yeah, I guess that's a question that I just was eager to kind of get your answer to, because I'm sure, like you said, there's bias. Then, like, you see certain players nowadays, you're like, I got you remind me of this, or you're, like you said, the star boy, or these little things.
Yeah,
So
don't get me wrong.
yeah,
There's definitely players that you look at and go, right, I see elements of
yeah.
the players at the very very top in them.
Hmm.
I'm not comparing them or going you're the next, because that's
Right.
wild,
Yeah.
completely wild. But there's certainly like little elements that you go, okay, if it's the way they perhaps receive the ball, it might be in the style of Eden Hazard or something like that. It might be. Has actually been working fairly recently with some players, and in a 1v1 situation, almost trying to get them to turn and pivot like Ndombele, whereby if they are sort of driving, but they're kind of shielding the ball almost in an attacking sense. They're shielding the ball, and then all of a sudden, can they roll and go out the other way? Which is something that Ndombele does obviously really, really well. I haven't managed to get one really for Riyad Mahrez yet. I'm still trying to work that particular one out because obviously Mahrez with his fake shot.
Yeah.
That's his trademark. But I think that's quite good as well to link some sessions to players that ultimately these kids are watching on a weekly basis, and it gives them that reference point as well. Obviously, when they are doing the sessions, and if it does come off, they'll be like, "Oh yeah, you see," they feed back to you as well. They go, "Oh, Wes, that like Riyad Mahrez session that we did? Oh yeah, well I did that actually in my game, and it was really really good." So obviously when you get that, that's a great feeling as well.
Wicked. I guess my next question now is to kind of ask you on the basis, of just, coaches that I'm sure that you've had experience of meeting other coaches, and you've been in that position where you've been mentored that's helped you along your journey to expand your knowledge, to learn different techniques, all these different things. So what do you think, is there anything more that could be done to help coaches develop further, as they're growing to become who they want to be, the coach that they want to become? Anything you think that could be done more?
I think mentoring is massive,
Yeah.
and I think it's probably one of the most underrated things, not only just in football or in coaching, but I think in life.
Yeah.
Like, because ultimately, like I know now I'm not the same coach that I was when I was 17. I know I've changed and I've developed as I've got older, but yet I still, like, in coaching terms, I'm still fairly young. So I still need that guidance along the way of how to almost deal with different situations that occur. So, because I think in coaching, it's probably, for anyone that perhaps wants to get into coaching, it's one of the very few jobs where somebody will rather tell you how they would do your job.
Right.
So you would put a session on and they'd go, "Oh, why have you gone about it this way?" You'd explain, and they go, "No, I'd do it this way, or I'd change this, or why are you doing it?" You get questioned quite a lot. So the rewards are probably very minimal, but when they come, they are great. Like the wins, they say, are always great when they don't occur as often. But no, certainly I think mentoring in terms of how you approach different situations, how you can design sessions. I think as well that's a massive one. If you're say working with a team of say under 14s as an example, and you want to work on something, but then you get say 6-8 players turn up. Well, how are you going to adapt your session to still try and get the same outcome, even though you don't get great numbers? I think that's key. I think coaching and coaches have got a lot better in terms of sharing ideas with each other. I think Twitter, like Twitter's been good for that, definitely. But I think there still needs to be more, I'd say, of that in terms of sharing ideas and things, because coaches are probably some of the biggest thieves going. Like, I've nicked sessions off of other coaches. I've nicked sessions off coaches that when I was a player, and I still apply them now, just
Yeah.
obviously tweak it a little bit to make sure that, you know, the outcomes are what I want, and that, you know, for the needs of the players. But yeah, I think mentoring is probably the biggest one. I would say certainly, because I know for myself, I would love to have a mentor on a bit more of a regular basis, where I can be like, right, this is, you know, I'm struggling with this particular thing. Can you perhaps come to a session and, you know, help me out a little bit, and things like that. So yeah, I think that's probably my big one.
Brilliant, brilliant. I like that. I like that touch. So you've talked about what could be done to help more of and mentoring, which actually sets up perfectly for my next question. What advice now? You've got a young coach who's potentially watching this. You said that, you know, hopefully by the end of this interview, someone may have been inspired, you know, maybe that will initiate or create, you know, make a spark for them to want to pursue coaching. So what advice now would you give to young coaches? Also, you can include yourself. Like, if there was a young Wes watching,
Yeah.
what advice would you give to these young people?
I would probably say be as enthusiastic as you can. That's a key one. You know, I think kids thrive off of enthusiasm. They absolutely love it. And you know, I see it a lot, especially with the mini kickers sessions that I run. I see it so much. Like, the more enthusiastic I am, any other coach that I have coming in, like, the more enthusiastic we are, they feed off it, and it's like they are buzzing essentially off it. It's like someone's giving them some Haribo Tangfastics and they are off. So I definitely say that. But I think also in my time, I've seen some young coaches, and one of the things that I get is, if I speak to them, just have a little, you know, you just go, oh, how did you find it? And they go, yeah, well, I was a bit nervous, you know, I was a bit unsure whether what I was saying was right. And you just go, well, no, what you're saying was right. Just be confident in it a little bit more. You know, you may not get it 100% right, and that's okay. That's okay. You know, we're human at the end of the day. We are going to make mistakes along the way. But then it's about almost, how do we deal with those mistakes, and then how do we make sure that we are better at dealing with it should a similar situation occur again. But yeah, I'd obviously say be confident in the information that you're giving to players, because the more confident you are in what you're saying, the more responsive they're going to be to obviously what you're telling them, and I think they're more likely to carry out the tasks that you're setting out, as well. Obviously, be yourself. Yes,
of course.
have idols. You know, I've listed a whole load of them, and a host of idols that you know, and people that I looked up to. But essentially, like, be your own sort of person and develop your own kind of personality, and how you want to be perceived, as well. But I think within coaching, maybe even look to specialize a little bit. So if I look at Alex Inglethorpe at Liverpool, prime example, right? He's come out in interviews and said that, because he's been a manager before, he was manager of Exeter City, then he went to Tottenham and worked in the academy, and now he's at Liverpool working in their academy. He wants to be perceived as the best youth coach that there is. So he's clear on what he's specializing almost, and being like, right, I don't really want to work first team or senior level. I want to be the best youth coach that I can be, essentially. So don't get me wrong, there is going to be times perhaps where you are working for companies where, you know, you might not be the most confident in delivering, for example, a PE session. That might not necessarily be your specialism, in delivering, say, PE sessions, but you might be better at delivering a mini kicker session with, you know, 5 to 6 year olds or 4-year-olds or something like that. Or you might be better actually working with players individually, on a more personal, technical basis. It might be, you know, that you're better working in a team environment than you are working in an individual environment, or you know, you can only work with a certain age bracket or cohort of players. But I think if you work that out, obviously the quicker you can do that, the better. But no, certainly I think there is that room and that need, I think, for specialism. I think we're seeing it a lot now, or certainly in some Premier League clubs, they are starting to value almost technical specific coaches. So I'm pretty sure Southampton have recruited a technical skills coach for their academy. Obviously Rene Meulenstein went in at Man United as a technical skills coach, and whatnot. So there is value within those. But yeah, I think maybe just working out like your speciality. If you want to be a coach that can cover a wide sort of range of age groups and different types, then fair play. That's completely up to you. But I think there's definitely some little value in that. But ultimately, I'd say sort of be enthusiastic, be yourself, and definitely be clear and concise in what it is you're delivering.
Brilliant. For those of you listening, I hope you took away those 3 major points that, in terms of the advice that, Wes was giving out. I certainly really appreciate listening to that. Wes, before we finish, I do have 2 quick more questions for you. Ones that I thought on the spot and ones that I think that maybe you haven't been asked this before. So I guess the first question is, throughout your coaching experience, what's the one kind of, how do I say it? What's the one trait or characteristic? I wouldn't say trait or characteristic. So let's say, for instance, like for me, I've learned throughout, training the kids that I've learned, like to transfer to my daily life is patience. Mm-hmm. So what I've learned from that is basically to be patient. Is there something that you've learned from your coaching experience that you would apply to your daily life now every day? Like what is that thing?
I'm not 100% sure. I think maybe what I did learn, it wasn't necessarily from coaching, it was more from my master's degree, was time management. Okay. I had to just manage my time. And I think the more I do that now, like I block off a lot of different, so now like I might say do a podcast and then it's like, right, okay, well, what else can I do sort of in and around that day? And it's like, right, well, I might need to leave, say, half an hour in between doing something before my next task, for example, and little things like that. So I think time management is probably one of the big ones that I've learned to do. But I think I'm quite fortunate because the line of work that I'm sort of doing is kind of my daily life as well. Right. So like I get to kind of live within my job, and my job lives within me essentially, because obviously I'm a business owner, so I can kind of, and self-employed, so I can kind of work around my schedules and things like that. But I think sort of timings and schedules are things that I've sort of lived by for a bit of a long time now. So it's something that I've just sort of ingrained in myself over the years, and to just kind of give myself that structure, within the day. I think that's probably one of the things that I'd probably take from both, really. But I think, that's probably it, to be honest.
Time management, brilliant. And my final question before we finish today's episode is, so you specialize mainly on one-to-ones. Mm-hmm. I'm going to give you 2 options here. Which player would you dream of coaching one-to-one? It could be an all-time player. It could be a current player today. I've put you on the spot now because which player would you have loved to have worked with or want to work with now on a one-to-one basis, or you also have the option of like sort of like a team. Let's say if you're just coaching a team, is there a player that you would have loved to coach in a professional team environment? Is there a player that you would have loved to coach one-to-one? So you've got 2 players to pick. So I'll put you on the spot there.
Damn. Yeah, I think it'd be foolish not to say Messi, because he's the greatest player of the generation. Right. And I've never, but then saying that, when I've had the privilege of watching him for Barcelona, and I didn't know anybody could be that good, put it that way. But I didn't know anybody that could be that effective without the ball. Messi's more dangerous when he's not on the ball than when he is on the ball. And by the way, he's pretty dangerous when he's on the ball. And you almost go from kind of sitting as sort of we are now, like pretty relaxed, and you almost just sort of edge forward to the edge of your seat because you know something exciting is going to happen. But I would probably look. There's going to be loads. I think, you know, if you had a Ledley King with two good knees, what a player he would have been. Because he was pretty decent. It's fair to say with one knee. And probably one of the best defenders again that I've witnessed, and he had one knee. Moussa Dembele, greatest of all time. Greatest of all time.
I had a feeling, yeah.
You know, I even saw something the other day. Harry Kane said he's the best player that he's played with. But everybody that's played with Moussa Dembele says exactly the same. So it would have been nice, I think, to see just up close and personal, like how good some of these guys like actually are on a day-to-day basis. Interesting. So I think that's probably the team environment, but I think interestingly, like in a 1v1 environment, I would probably prefer to work with. Don't get me wrong, I would love to work with a professional footballer at the end of the day. I would absolutely love it. Or I would love the scenario whereby a player that I've worked with makes it into that professional environment. Obviously that would be a dream, essentially. But you know, I think there is that little part of me that goes, actually perhaps work with somebody that is perhaps lesser known or doesn't have the ability, and just make them feel a little bit more confident in what they're doing, and things like that. And you know, you mentioned success stories earlier. Another one who I would argue is probably one of my biggest success stories is a player that come to me he's an under 13, but his coordination isn't the greatest. So you do a little bit of work in the ladder, a little bit of SAQ stuff, and you're doing the sort of closing the gate hip rotations, hip and groin rotations. And when I asked him to do it, you should have seen his face. He was like, it was as if I'd just told him, like, it was either I was speaking a different language or I told him that he was going to die in the next like 2 years or something. It was ridiculous. You know, like one of those clairvoyants that tell you sort of how your life's going to map out and things like that, and stuff. But having said that, so that was the first session, and it was like he couldn't really control a ball or anything like that. Like his footballing ability was I was thinking, I actually thought to myself, like, almost, what have I got here? So I'm no miracle worker, but I'm thinking to myself, right, I'll, you know, do what I can. But I look at him now, and he can do the stuff in the ladders a lot better. He's a lot more confident in his ability. He knows what he's doing essentially when he's on the ball, and even before the ball comes to him, he knows what to do. But also as well, he recognizes things and he spots things that he knows he perhaps didn't do. So if he's a central midfield player, he knows now that if he's going to start high, he's got to drop in, he's got to receive on an angle, he has to scan, and he has to receive off his back foot and try and take his first touch forwards. But if I'm filming that particular part of the session, he will know and he will spot things that he knows that he didn't do, and perhaps I may not have spotted. So he can go like, we'll roll it, and he'll do it, and he'll go, oh, I didn't scan, or I didn't do it, or I didn't do that. I think that's probably what gives me the greatest satisfaction, is just giving those players that belief that they can obviously achieve what's being asked of them, and they can do the task. You know, playing football is fairly easy, fairly straightforward. Obviously, you know, the pros do it to a level, and they're consistent, which is, you know, why they are where they are. But, you know, to sort of be a half decent footballer, kind of, yeah, it does take a bit of work, and it does take a bit of sacrifice as well along the way. Don't get me wrong, but, you know, it's something that can be worked on, and it doesn't sometimes take too much to be worked on. You know, just giving players confidence and belief, as I keep saying, is key, because if you give them that, they can do anything. Honestly, they can do anything. You'll get them feeling 10 foot tall and whatnot. So that's probably what gives me more satisfaction than working with some superstars. Don't get me wrong, I'd love to work with superstars. You know, it would do me the world of good. It would probably challenge me a little bit more as a coach as well, because I'm not kind of working with a grassroots player anymore. You know, I'm working with somebody who is either at an academy or is playing, say, at a good standard semi-pro or even pro level. But yeah, I think obviously you know my love for Moussa Dembele. Most people that know me know my love for Moussa Dembele. So yeah, see kind of how good he would have been on a day-to-day basis would have been unbelievable. So yeah, I'd probably have to go with Moose. I'd just have to. If I don't, I'm there like, what am I doing? Because I just loved the guy so much, and yeah, he's a player that Tottenham miss massively now. But yeah, like I say, yeah, it's great to work with the superstars, but actually, in terms of my sort of craft and kind of knowing where I am, those players that perhaps come that are a bit shy, and you give them the confidence, and all of a sudden they are doing things, you know, so much better than say where we started, is probably the best feeling that I can have.
Brilliant, Wes. I really loved. It's like you're going on a eulogy there. Like you're just going off there, and it was just brilliant. Like I love the added bit of humility that you put in there when I did ask that question. You know, so I'm sure everyone would appreciate that, guys. That is it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Wes, for sharing all your insight, all your knowledge. I'm sure everyone has appreciated, and those who've tuned in today have learned something, and hopefully like they've got a spark to whatever it is in football that they want to pursue. So we really appreciate you being on today's episode, talking about your experiences for today. So for those of you that have tuned in, you can listen via YouTube or Spotify. Please leave your comments in the YouTube section down below as what you want us to kind of talk about in the future. Also, your comments on this episode as well, we'd really, really, really appreciate it as well. This episode will also come out on Spotify, so follow us on Spotify at WM32 Football as well as YouTube as well. And also, follow us on our social media platforms as well at WM32 Football, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And as you can see, myself and Wes are displaying our merch that we are currently wearing. So if you would like to get your merchandise, then please head over to the shop at www.wm32football.com/shop. I had to do a little head bop there because that's how it gets me going and remembering the site. So yeah, if you want to go out there, please head over to the shop online as well. Also, we also have a partnership with Jack Collison Soccer Schools that is happening for the May half term, which is in June. So if you would like to, where would they be able to book that? Whereas if they wanted to be able to book their sessions with the soccer schools?
Yeah, so with the holiday camp, you can head over to our particular website, www.wm32football.com. Go onto the sessions page and you will see the holiday camp there. Now, if you are going to book and you click on the book now tab on the website, don't kind of get scared or don't kind of get worried if it redirects you to the Jack Collison Soccer Schools website. We are using that as our platform and facility almost to help with the bookings. Their website is a little bit better in terms of handling and getting different options for people to book onto the website. Unfortunately, mine isn't there yet, but I will get there one day, I am sure. So yeah, head over to www.wm32football.com, go on the sessions page, scroll down, you'll see the holiday camp there, click on the button and it will redirect you to book your slot on via the Jack Collison Soccer Schools website.
Brilliant. Also, as well, as you know, we are now back on social media. Over the weekend, WM32 joined the wider football community in boycotting social media platforms in support of stopping online abuse. So we thank you for those who have taken part as well with us, and we do not condone any sort of abuse at all online. So we are very happy that, you know, the football community has taken a stand to join stopping this from happening. So we are back on social media as well. So thank you for everyone tuning into this web episode, and we look forward to you to seeing next time. Have a safe day. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Thank you.